Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. In Star Wars, you have massive and very vertical battlefields thanks to the technology that's available in the galaxy. In your typical planetary invasion, you have many different phases of combat that start off at the outer edges of a system and then work their way down to the orbital level, through the atmosphere, and eventually we get to ground combat. The lower you are on that totem pole of conflict, the more vulnerable you are. Therefore, as an infantryman, a space cop, or a marine, it's important to have quick, reliable, and durable transportation to get you from point A to point B. Because there's nothing more demoralizing and destructive for your battle plans than losing a good portion of your troops before they can even be deployed. Today we'll be taking a look at 10 of the best troop transports in the Star Wars galaxy that do a great job at getting your soldiers to where they need to go. Since the Star Wars galaxy is so massive and diverse, we're going to have tons of different design philosophies and hopefully some ships that you've never heard of before. First up, we have the RK-392 Mobile TAC Pod. I know a lot of people make fun of the Morlana corporate tactical forces, who I lovingly like to call tactical blueberries, but all things considered for security purposes, the TAC pods are very efficiently designed and also aesthetically kind of pleasing. Manufactured by Consolidated Holdings, a Preox Morlana corporation, these tiny transports had a reinforced hull that could take on most small arms fire they would face in such a job. They could also carry up to 6 officers standing for the short journey from orbit to ground. These were not hyperdrive equipped ships and had to be carried from system to system by a BTY-180 carrier, which could hold up to 5 of these TAC pods. Light and nimble, the TAC pods were also equipped with chin-mounted rotating laser cannons, along with 3 additional fixed laser cannons, giving it both dogfighting and ground strafing capabilities. And knowing what we know about corporate security, these ships are probably going to be very cheap to produce and maintain. Although these ships were mainly used for corporate security, they wouldn't be half bad for a military force. I like this idea of spreading out your troops into a number of smaller ships. That way, if one is taken out, you're not losing like an entire platoon, you're only losing a squad or a fire team. The small size of these ships, along with their folding wings, allow them to land in extremely tight spaces. The rear-facing ramps give these officers a bit more protection upon exiting the ship. Our next vessel is definitely quite different from all of the other ships on this list. It's the Drock-class boarding ship from Colicoid Creation Nest, whose products are either designed to give you nightmares or commit war crimes. Sometimes both. The Drock-class boarding ships could hold up to 6 battle droids and were equipped with 4 twin light laser cannons. And unlike all the other troop transports on this list, this ship was designed for a very specific task: boarding enemy ships, usually while they were still moving. Equipped with 4 massive blades, these pods would essentially hurl itself into the side of enemy ships and latch on and then proceed to burrow its way through the outside hull, allowing the ship to deposit droids in a very disruptive way. Generally speaking, when you're defending a spaceship, you're usually trying to position your troops at the hangar bay and docking points where enemies can have easy access to get on board. You want to funnel them into a kill zone you've created with your defenders. With the Drock-class boarding ships' capability, you can basically bypass these set of defenses and really disrupt defenders' strategy and how they want to keep you off their ship. Overall, it's a very ingenious and terrifying design. These pods were also used to hunt down and destroy Republic Navy escape pods. Now, Incom has made dropships in the past, but we're not going to be talking about the UT-60D U-Wing in this video. As beautiful and elegant as that thing was, it only had a crew capacity of 8, but it was twice as large as the mobile TAC pod, and so it's just not a very efficient design. What is impressive is the Y-85 Titan that Incom designed for the Empire. While aesthetically not very pleasing, these large, blocky, and heavily armored vessels could carry 4 AT-ATs internally, along with 4 AT-STs, along with their entire crew, which amounts to about a company of mechanized soldiers. Although the Gazanti-class cruiser could also be used to deploy AT-ATs, one could argue that the Y-85 is a better option for deployment to LZs in more active battlefields. The only problem with the Y-85 Titan was it was way too large for even an Imperial-class Star Destroyer's hangar, and so they could really only be deployed in Star Dreadnoughts, like the Executor class. The Y-85 would play an important role during the Battle of Hoth. The heavy missile platform droid gunship designed by Harchal Engineering and manufactured by Bactoid is probably one of the deadliest ships on this list. Equipped with several laser cannons and flex ordnance launchers, which could not only send out destructive concussion missiles, but also shoot at Discord missiles that could deploy buzz droids, giving this gunship a surprisingly potent and unique air-to-air weapon. But the main purpose of the HMP was to terrorize ground forces. They were especially effective against insurgencies because they could basically patrol areas and loiter over spaces for a much longer period than fixed-wing craft or starships. These things always gave me a Terminator hunter-killer vibe. And because these things were controlled by a droid brain and used repulsor lifts, they were far more maneuverable than your normal atmospheric crafts. Thanks to the more robust nature of the Separatist droid army and their units, these HMPs could carry around 12 battle droids in their undercarriage externally and rapidly deploy them when encountering any difficult-to-reach insurgents. Since there's no compartment for these droids to exit, there are no dangerous funnels that they have to cross in order to deploy, a problem that almost every dropship on this list has. The HMP droid gunship almost single-handedly destroyed the Onderonian resistance movement, but the Republic sent a team of operators and advisors to the movement and helped equip them with black market anti-air rocket systems, which did somewhat level the playing field. The Separatist Navy really had some ingenious transports that were very unorthodox in design and also terrifying. Take the Colicoid Creation Nest Trident-class assault ship. This was an aquatic vessel that looked like a giant squid, but was also capable of spaceflight. It could also use 4 individual tentacles to propel itself over obstacles on land. These vehicles, like a lot of Colicoid Creation Nest inventions, were designed to breach the hull of enemy spaceships and even fortifications. Once they created an opening, they could deposit a dozen Aqua Series battle droids for an assault. Equipped with 8 laser cannons, along with extremely heavy armor on their tentacle legs, these Trident-class assault ships could break through most types of fortifications. The Trident also had a unique attack in which they could start spinning their tentacles to create a vortex that posed a huge threat to organics in the nearby area. The Imperial Transport and the AAL 1971 Troop Transport used by the First Order both remind me quite a lot of the shallow draft landing craft used by the Allied forces during D-Day. The First Order variant is slightly longer and also has rooms for 2 recon speeders, but they're both quite similar in design, and what makes them quite interesting is their forward-facing ramps. On the Higgins boats used during World War II, there's a pretty simple and brutal reason why they use this type of configuration. First of all, if the ramp was deployed from the back, it's very likely that people could drown in, pretty shallow water because of all the equipment they were wearing. The forward-facing ramp was just easier to use. It could also be used to deploy jeeps and other materials quickly onto the beach. But the Imperial and First Order transports, of course, were not used for aquatic assaults. They were used to bring troops from space, usually onto the ground. So the main reason why you had the forward-facing ramp is if the doors for the transport were on the sides, soldiers could bottle up inside the transport and refuse to leave, which could make the entire craft vulnerable to heavy fire. When you put the door in the front of a vessel and you lower the ramp, especially if there's enemy blasters trained on you, the second the firing starts, troopers are forced to exit the craft in the only way possible by pushing forward. This is to avoid a fish-in-the-barrel kind of experience. This really fits in line with the First Order and Empire's more aggressive tactics when using ground troops: charge forward, charge past your fallen comrades, and overwhelm the enemy with meat waves. The low-altitude transport by Rothana Heavy Engineering, a subsidiary of Quat, was a one-size-fit-all for the transport needs of the Grand Army of the Republic. It had many different variants, including a less heavily armored one for civilian patrols. It also had a heavy lift variant that could carry a full all-terrain tactical enforcer into battle, and then there was the standard infantry transport version, which could carry up to 30 troopers on board, which was an entire platoon basically. That's very impressive. And upon deploying whatever they were carrying, the LAAT could stay on station and provide air support or help scout the nearby areas. On paper, it was quite a brilliant design, but in practice, the LAAT had to shift its doctrine pretty heavily after just a few battles, especially as losses started mounting as Separatist AA gunners started focusing more on taking down these slower moving transports before they can reach the ground. The Empire actually had their own variant of the LAAT called the Imperial Dropship Transport based on the troop carrying variant. It was a bit smaller than the Republic variant, but it kept that side door which allowed for quick deployment and extraction of troops. Overall, this was a classic design for the Republic and one of the most commonly used transports during the Clone Wars. The Lambda-class T-4A might be the most famous battle taxi used by the Galactic Empire, but actually, that was mostly designed as a luxurious transport for high-ranking Imperial officers and diplomats. It was armed and equipped to deal with conflict, but the insides were actually quite luxurious, and so you don't really want stormtroopers with their muddy boots dirtying up the inside of these things, although they were commonly used for troop transports into battlefields. It was the Lambda class's larger cousin, the Sentinel class landing craft, that actually fulfilled the troop transport requirement for the Stormtrooper Corps. Instead of the 20 troops the Lambda class could carry, the Sentinel could haul 54 to 75 troopers. The Sentinel could also carry up to 6 74Z speeders or 12 E-Web heavy repeating cannons, along with their tripods and generators. And unlike the gunships we mentioned before, these landing craft were designed for spaceflight. They're far more maneuverable and also hyperdrive equipped, so they could move quite independently without support from larger capital ships. As such, the Sentinel class was used to transport all types of personnel in between Imperial worlds and bases. The CR-20 troop carrier from Corellian Engineering Corporation is a lesser-known transport used by the Grand Army of the Republic during the Clone Wars. It was quite a bulky ship at 60 meters in length, and it could carry up to 40 clone troopers along with 12 74Z speeder bikes, enough to basically deploy a recon element. The CR-20 also has 4 escape vehicles. It's the only transport on this list that has this kind of design, and it's a good idea because, again, these troopers are very vulnerable, especially when the Republic was facing the Separatist-destroyed army and was completely outnumbered. Unlike the LAAT, the CR-20 is actually hyperdrive equipped and could basically fly from system to system. It was designed specifically for spaceflight. For weapons, the CR-20 also had 2 turbo lasers, which is terrific for heavy supporting fire. The ship was originally designed by CEC for planetary security forces, but several units were purchased by the Republic right after the Battle of Geonosis, when there was a great need for all types of new equipment. Several LAAT formations had been destroyed during the Battle of Geonosis, and they were looking for alternative solutions. Last up, we have the Imperial transport from Senior Fleet Systems, the TIE Reaper Attack Lander. I'm a huge fan of this ship, having flown it quite a lot in Star Wars squadrons. This transport was primarily used by Special Forces units like the Death Troopers and could carry up to 10 passengers, slightly more than its competitor, the U-Wing. I really like that this ship is designed to actually be able to fly in atmospheric conditions with its large wing surfaces. Most ships would drop like a brick once they lost power, but the TIE Reaper can actually glide down safely if they do lose engine power, which again is very crucial because of the amount of troops you have on board. The ship was also quite maneuverable and hyperdrive equipped, making it very capable all on its own. I do have to say, while I was doing this list, I remembered we're missing out one very capable starfighter transport ship, and that is the Cormac-class fighter transport by Mandal Motors. This is used by the Mandalorian splinter faction known as Death Watch, and although these ships were pretty expensive and quite rare, they were extremely robust. They could really handle themselves in a dogfight, and they could deposit up to 24 heavily armed Mandalorian troopers. Because most Mandalorian troopers are equipped with jetpacks, the way they're deployed is quite unique as well. They basically have jump seats, so the Cormac-class fighter transport could deploy troopers without actually stopping, which is a huge plus. But again, this is a ship that can only be used if you have jetpack troops, so it is kind of limited, but I really love the design of this thing. I'm actually upset that I almost missed talking about this ship. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. There's 10, well, at least 11 now, transport ships that I consider the best in the Star Wars galaxy. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. My name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.